This is the story of a woman who once lived in comfort, surrounded by love, peace, and security, until life shattered everything in a single heartbeat. She was a wife cherished by her husband, a mother adored by her children. But when tragedy struck and death stole the pillar of her home, the people who were meant to protect her became the very hands that pushed her into the darkness. But they did not know that within her lived a spirit stronger than iron, a fire that no amount of betrayal could extinguish. In this folktale, you will witness how suffering can shape warriors, how greed can destroy even the proudest hearts, and how destiny always rises for those who refuse to bow to pain. What her enemies meant for her downfall became the very force that lifted her, and her children, into greatness the world would never forget. Welcome to Afrotales by Zizandra, home of storytelling. In those days, before sorrow crept into their lives, the household of Cheek and Ngozi was filled with laughter, warmth, and abundance. Cheek was a respected man in the community, a successful trader whose businesses stretched across the markets of Onitsha and Lagos. He was admired not only for his wealth, but for his kindness, a man who never let the needy go away empty-handed. His wife, Ngozi, was as beautiful in spirit as she was in appearance. She ran her home with grace, her smile lighting up every room, her gentle voice carrying comfort to her children and encouragement to her husband. There are 3 children, Kelechi, the eldest, only 15, Ifeoma, 12, and little Samto, barely 8, knew no lack. Every evening, after Cheek returned from his work, the family would gather around the dining table for a meal cooked by Ngozi. The children would share stories of school. Cheek would tell them tales of his youthful struggles, and laughter would fill the house until it echoed beyond the compound walls. To outsiders, theirs was the picture of a blessed family, a home where love reigned supreme and dreams were nurtured. The compound itself bore witness to their joy. A wide bungalow stood proudly in the center, painted cream with blue roofing sheets that glistened under the sun. Mango and guava trees shaded the yard where the children often played after school, their laughter ringing like bells. Neighbors often paused at the gate just to watch the family together, Cheek teaching Kelechi how to fix a broken fence, Ngozi braiding Ifeoma's hair under the evening sun, Samto chasing grasshoppers with a stick in hand. Evenings were sacred. Ngozi would sit with her husband under the veranda, her head resting on his shoulder as they spoke softly of the future they envisioned for their children. Universities abroad, successful careers, weddings that would make the town proud. And when the children came running, interrupting those quiet conversations, Cheek would scoop Samto into his arms and say, "You will all go farther than I ever did. You are the stars of tomorrow." In those moments, Ngozi felt certain nothing could touch her family, for love wrapped around them like an unbreakable shield, but shadows often linger where light shines brightest. Among the relatives who visited occasionally were Cheek's brothers and their wives, faces that wore smiles but eyes that glittered with envy. They admired his wealth but whispered behind his back. They complimented Ngozi's beauty but muttered bitterly about her influence. During family gatherings, they pretended loyalty, but their hearts burned with jealousy at how Cheek adored his wife and children, showering them with comfort and opportunities. Ngozi noticed the coldness in their tone, the way they sometimes dismissed her children with a wave, but she chose not to dwell on it. She believed that family, no matter how flawed, would stand together in times of need. She did not know that those seeds of envy would one day sprout into betrayal so deep it would shake her very soul. For now, she chose joy. She focused on her children's laughter, on her husband's reassuring embrace, and on the beauty of the present moment, not realizing how fragile such peace could be. It happened suddenly, like lightning split in the sky without warning. One morning, Cheek left the house as usual, dressed smartly in his starched white shirt, his leather shoes polished to a shine. He kissed Ngozi on the forehead and promised to bring the children suya on his way back. But by evening, news reached the house like a storm that shattered glass. There had been an accident on the highway. Cheek's car had collided with the truck. He did not survive. At first, Ngozi refused to believe it. Her body shook violently as neighbors held her, her children clinging to her waist, crying, "Mama, where is Papa? Tell them it's not true." The walls of their once joyful home seemed to close in, silence replacing laughter, despair swallowing hope. The man who had been her strength, her companion, the father of her children, was gone in a heartbeat. And as tears streamed endlessly down her face, Ngozi could not yet know that this tragedy was only the beginning, that the real storm was yet to come. The days after Cheek's burial were a blur of mourning for Ngozi and her children. Their once vibrant home was now filled with silence, broken only by the sobs of little Samto at night, and the muffled sniffles of Ifeoma as she clutched her school books, afraid her father's absence meant the end of her education. Neighbors came with sympathetic words, friends stopped by with food, but as the days stretched into weeks, those visits thinned, and the weight of reality pressed heavier on Ngozi's shoulders. She comforted her children as best as she could, whispering promises through her tears, "Your father may be gone, but I will not let you suffer." She truly believed her husband's family would stand by her, that they would honor the man who had provided for them all. But beneath the surface, whispers grew louder. Cheek's brothers began to visit more frequently, their faces dark with something that was not grief, but calculation. They asked about documents, keys, and bank accounts, their questions sharper than condolences. At first, Ngozi thought they were only trying to help manage affairs. She did not see the betrayal forming like a storm on the horizon. One morning, less than a month after the funeral, they arrived at the house in numbers. Faces she had once called family filled the compound, their eyes cold and hard. The eldest brother, Uche, stepped forward, his voice stern. "Ngozi," he said, "this house, this land, all of it belongs to the family now. Chike left no will. You and your children have no claim here." His words struck her like a whip. "No claim?" She cried, clutching Samto's hand. "This is the house my husband built with his sweat, the roof under which we built our lives together. How can you say we have no place?" But Uche's face remained unmoved. "You are a woman," he spat, "and in our culture, women do not inherit. Pack your things and leave." With that, the others moved quickly. Clothes were pulled from wardrobes and tossed into the dust. Furniture was dragged outside. The children's toys scattered carelessly. Neighbors gathered at the gate, watching, whispering, shaking their heads. Ifoma clung to her mother, sobbing, "Mama, why are they doing this to us?" Kelechi, barely a teenager, but already trying to be a man, stepped forward in anger, his voice shaking as he shouted, "This is our father's house. You cannot throw us out." But his small fists were no match for the men who pushed him aside, laughing cruelly. Ngozi's heart shattered as she watched her children's dignity trampled before the world. By evening, the gate was locked behind them. Ngozi stood in the street, her children huddled close, their belongings piled in a few torn bags. Neighbors offered pitying glances, but no one stepped forward to help. Fear of offending the powerful brothers kept their mouths shut. The humiliation burned like fire in Ngozi's chest. She sank to the ground, clutching her children, her tears soaking their hair. "Where will we go now?" she whispered, her voice breaking. The children wept with her, their bodies trembling in the cold night air. In desperation, she went to relatives, knocking on doors, pleading for a place to stay. But one by one, they turned her away. Some said they had no space. Others mumbled excuses, and a few bluntly told her, "It is not our burden." Each rejection was like a knife in her back. She returned to the roadside with her children, defeated, her heart heavy with despair. For the first time since Cheek's death, she felt utterly alone, not just widowed, but abandoned. And as she watched her children fall asleep on the hard ground, their bellies empty, Ngozi realized that she could no longer wait for kindness from others. The world had turned its back on her. That night marked a new beginning, though it was wrapped in pain. The once proud wife of a respected man was now homeless, her children reduced to tears and hunger. Yet, in the depths of her sorrow, something stirred inside Ngozi, a fierce resolve, born not of choice but necessity. She wiped her tears and held her children tighter. "They may have thrown us out," she whispered into the darkness, "but they will not destroy us." The stars above seemed to flicker in silent agreement, though the road ahead promised nothing but hardship. Ngozi knew that survival would demand sacrifices she had never imagined, and her children would have to learn resilience far earlier than life should demand of them. But as dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of red and gold, she rose to her feet. With her children gathered around her, she took the first step into exile, her heart heavy with grief yet burning with determination. The storm had begun, and she had no shield but her courage. The first night on the street was a torment Ngozi would never forget. She sat on the bare ground by the roadside, her children curled up against her, trembling from cold and fear. The hard pavement pressed into her bones, mosquitoes buzzed relentlessly, and the stares of passersby cut into her dignity like knives. Kelechi tried to act strong, wrapping his small arms around his younger siblings, but Ngozi could see the tears glistening in his eyes. Ifeoma whimpered softly, asking, "Mama, when are we going home?" Samto, the youngest, clung to her wrapper, whispering through sobs, "Mama, I'm hungry." Ngozi had no answer, only silent tears rolling down her cheeks. In that moment, she felt the crushing weight of failure, the shame of being stripped of everything. Yet, even as despair clawed at her heart, she knew she had no choice but to keep moving. By morning, when the sun rose and the city came alive, she took her children by the hand and began to wander the streets, searching for scraps of kindness, searching for a way to survive. Days turned into weeks of unimaginable hardship. Hunger became their cruelest companion. Many nights they went to bed with nothing in their stomachs, the children crying themselves to sleep while Ngozi pretended not to hear so she could weep in silence. They begged for leftovers at restaurants. sometimes eating cold rice laced with sand, sometimes licking soup from discarded plates. When generosity failed, they picked food from refused dumps, swatting flies as they chewed in shame. Ngozi's once glowing skin dulled, her wrapper tore in places, and her children grew thinner by the day. Neighbors who had once admired her passed by without recognition, avoiding her eyes, as if poverty had stripped her of her humanity. Still, she refused to give in completely. She began to do menial jobs, washing clothes for strangers, scrubbing floors until her knees ached, carrying loads at the market though her back screamed in pain. Each naira she earned was precious, often just enough for a small loaf of bread to share among 4 mouths. Her hands grew rough, her body bent under the strain, but her will hardened. One evening, after earning 100 from scrubbing a wealthy woman's veranda, she bought a small portion of beans. As she and her children ate, she watched their faces brighten with gratitude, and in that moment she whispered to herself, "As long as I can feed them, I will not give up." It was desperation that pushed her into frying akara by the roadside. With the last coin she had saved, she bought a small bowl of beans, borrowed a pan from a sympathetic market woman, and set up near a busy junction. Smoke stung her eyes, oil splattered her arms, and passersby mocked her. Look at Chief Cheek's wife, now reduced to akara seller. But Ngozi kept turning the akara balls, her hands steady, her eyes focused. She knew shame would not feed her children, but courage would. The first day, she sold enough to buy Gary for the night. The second day, she made a little more. Soon, the roadside became her lifeline. Every morning, before dawn, she carried her pan and bowl, with Kelechi beside her to help fetch water and call customers. Ifeoma looked after Samto during school hours, and in the evenings, they all gathered around Ngozi, eating whatever little she brought home. Though the profits were meager, the children no longer starved every day. Kelechi, determined not to let his mother carry the burden alone, began learning a trade after school, sometimes working late into the night. His hands blistered, but he bore the pain with pride, saying, "Mama, I will stand with you. One day, we will rise again." His words became the fire that kept Ngozi's heart burning through the coldest nights. Still, survival was not easy. Rain often ruined her akara, forcing her to throw away what she could not sell. There were days when the oil finished before she could buy more, and nights when sickness struck, leaving her weak, but still forcing herself to stand over the fire. Yet, with every obstacle, her resolve deepened. She taught her children the value of prayer, gathering them in the evenings to lift their voices, not in complaint, but in hope. "We will not die like this," she told them. "We will live, and we will shine." Slowly, the family adapted to their new reality. The children grew stronger, learning resilience far beyond their years. The humiliation remained, the whispers of neighbors, the mocking laughter of those who once envied them, but it no longer crushed them. Instead, it fueled their determination. They had been cast out, reduced to nothing, but they refused to disappear. And as the days turned into months, Ngozi's akara pan, her children's sacrifices, and their unbroken spirit began to plant seeds of a future no one could yet see. The storm had battered them, but it had not destroyed them. In the ashes of their suffering, a quiet promise was taking root. They would rise again. The transformation began quietly, almost unnoticeably, like the soft rays of dawn after a long night. At first, Ngozi's akara business barely kept them alive, but with each passing day, her hands grew steadier over the fire, her voice stronger as she called to customers, and her courage firmer as she faced humiliation with her head held high. Slowly, word spread about the akara woman whose balls were always fresh, crispy, and made with honesty. No cheating in measures, no deceit in prices. Traders on their way to the market bought from her. Children returning from school stopped with coins in hand, and even taxi drivers paused at her corner to take a quick snack. The profits were small, but Ngozi had learned the discipline of stretching every naira. Instead of buying herself new clothes, she bought a second pan. Instead of indulging in meat, she saved for more beans and oil. Every sacrifice she made was with one goal: to give her children a better life. Soon, she could afford to send Ifeoma and Samto back to school, while Kelechi balanced his time between assisting her at dawn and continuing his apprenticeship in the evenings. Watching her children carry their books again brought tears to her eyes, not of sorrow this time, but of hope. For the first time since Cheek's death, she felt a flicker of light pushing back the darkness. The road was far from easy. Rainy seasons often threatened to ruin her hard-earned progress. There were mornings when storms soaked her beans before she could even light the fire, and afternoons when customers were scarce, leaving her with unsold akara that she and her children ate with heavy hearts. There were nights when the children studied by the weak glow of a kerosene lamp, their stomachs growling, while Ngozi mended torn school uniforms with trembling hands. Yet, through every hardship, the family found strength in their unity. Kelechi grew into a dependable young man, his hands roughened from work, but his spirit sharpened by responsibility. He often told his mother, "One day, I will build you a house bigger than the one they threw us out from." His words were not boasts, but solemn promises, spoken with the fire of determination. Ifeoma studied diligently, often finishing top of her class, while Santo, though young, carried herself with maturity beyond her years. She fetched water, helped run errands, and cheered her mother with jokes when despair threatened to overwhelm her. Together, they learned the rhythm of sacrifice: eat less today to save for tomorrow, endure hardship now to prepare for a better future. As time passed, Ngozi's sacrifices began to bear visible fruit. The akara stall grew into a small wooden shed with a bench for customers. Kelechi's apprenticeship advanced, and his master, impressed by his honesty and hard work, began to trust him with bigger responsibilities. Sometimes, Kelechi returned home with a little extra money, and instead of spending it on himself, he gave it to his mother, saying, "This is for beans, Mama." Let the fire keep burning. Ngozi's heart swelled with pride, knowing her husband's spirit lived on in their son. Slowly, the family moved out of begging and into survival with dignity. They were no longer mocked as much. Some neighbors even began to respect their determination. Yet, behind every small victory were countless sacrifices invisible to the world. There were nights Ngozi went without food so her children could eat, mornings when she rose before dawn despite aching joints, and moments when she swallowed insults from rude customers just to secure a sale. Still, she endured it all, her eyes fixed not on the pain of the present but on the promise of the future. Years rolled by, and with them came steady growth. Ngozi's akara shed became known in the neighborhood, a landmark for travelers and workers alike. Her children blossomed under her relentless sacrifices. Kelechi, now a young man, began to dream bigger than mere apprenticeship. Ifeoma won a scholarship that eased their financial burden, and Santo, once the crying girl on the street, grew into a bright student admired by her teachers. Though their lives were still modest, they walked with their heads high, no longer defined by pity but by resilience. The bitterness of exile had not crushed them. It had forged them into steel. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, Ngozi looked at her children's faces glowing in the lamplight and whispered, "We have suffered, but we are still standing. One day the world will see what God can do." Her children nodded, their hearts swelling with agreement. For they too knew that the storm that once threatened to destroy them had instead prepared them for a destiny greater than they could yet imagine. By the time a decade had passed, the woman who once fried akara by the roadside was no longer just another struggling widow. Ngozi had become a name in the community, a figure admired for her resilience, and her children had grown into young adults whose brilliance could not be hidden. Kelechi, the eldest, transformed the lessons he learned as an apprentice into a thriving enterprise of his own. He started small, repairing broken machines and selling spare parts. But soon, his honesty and determination attracted customers far beyond his neighborhood. Before long, he established a workshop that grew into a company, employing dozens of young men who once roamed the streets without direction. Ifeoma, whose hunger for knowledge had never dimmed, secured scholarships that carried her from local schools to universities abroad. She returned with degrees and a fierce determination to practice law, dedicating her career to protecting widows and orphans from the kind of injustice her family once suffered. Santo, the youngest, bloomed into a skilled architect, designing houses that became the pride of the city. Together, the three siblings carried the torch their father had left behind, each step of their journey fueled by the sacrifices of their mother. And through it all, Ngozi remained their anchor, watching them with pride, her once weary eyes now glowing with joy each time she whispered, "My children, you are the answer to my prayers." Their rise did not go unnoticed. The media began to tell their story, the family once cast out and left to rot, now standing tall as a symbol of resilience. Newspapers printed headlines celebrating their triumphs, television stations aired documentaries about their journey, and churches invited them to share testimonies that moved congregations to tears. One Sunday morning, a popular TV program aired a special feature, From Street to Stardom, the inspiring story of Ngozi and her children. The whole city watched as Kelechi stood proudly beside his sisters, narrating how their mother sold akara to keep them alive, how they endured nights of hunger, and how those struggles shaped them into who they had become. Cameras zoomed in on Ngozi as she wept openly, not from shame this time, but from gratitude, declaring, "I thought all was lost, but God turned our ashes into beauty." The broadcast struck a chord across the nation. Strangers who had never met them felt inspired. Messages poured in, offering support, invitations, and partnerships. Their story had become more than personal triumph. It was a beacon of hope. Meanwhile, the in-laws who had once thrown them out faced a very different reality. The wealth they had stolen from Cheek's legacy had long slipped through their fingers, wasted on reckless spending and selfish pursuits. Businesses collapsed under mismanagement, lands were sold off to pay debts, and houses once filled with luxury grew quiet and broken. Their children, spoiled by ill-gotten wealth, rebelled against them, falling into drugs, crime, and disgrace. One by one, their allies abandoned them. Friends who once dined at their lavish tables now crossed the street to avoid them. Illness plagued their bodies, guilt tormented their minds, and poverty pressed them into corners they had once mocked. Neighbors who had watched them strut with pride now shook their heads in pity. "See how the mighty have fallen," people whispered. The contrast was stark. While Ngozi and her children were being celebrated on national television, the in-laws hid in shame, unable to face the world they had once deceived. Their downfall was not just financial, but spiritual. The very greed that drove them to betray had eaten them alive from within. For Ngozi, the glow of her children's success and the weight of her in-laws' decline were never reasons to gloat. She had long learned that bitterness only chains the soul. Instead, she chose to stand in quiet dignity, allowing the world to see what resilience, sacrifice, and unity could achieve. Yet the contrast remained visible to all. Those who built their lives on deceit and cruelty crumbled into ruin, while those who endured suffering with faith and determination rose into greatness. One evening, as she sat in her modest but comfortable home, watching her children discuss business plans and community projects, she whispered a prayer of gratitude. The storm that once stripped her bare had given birth to a harvest more bountiful than she had ever imagined. But though joy filled her heart, she did not yet know that an even greater revelation awaited, one that would shake the foundations of their story and restore to them what had been stolen so long ago. The morning the truth finally surfaced began like any other, but by nightfall, the city would never forget the story that unfolded. Weeks after the television feature that celebrated Ngozi and her children's triumph, an elderly man appeared at their home. His steps were slow, his back bent with age, but his eyes carried a burden far heavier than his years. He introduced himself as Barrister Okafor, the lawyer who had once managed Chief Sheik's affairs. With trembling hands, he held out a brown envelope that looked worn from time and secrecy. "For many years, I have carried a guilt that has eaten me alive," he began, his voice breaking. "Your father trusted me with his will. He left everything to you and your children. But your uncles discovered I had the documents. They cornered me. They swore that if I revealed the truth, they would kill my wife, my children, my grandchildren. I was a coward. Fear chained my tongue and I hid what should have been yours. But age has stripped me of fear and guilt has left me no rest. Here is your father's last will and testament." The room froze. Ngozi pressed her palm to her lips as Kelechi opened the envelope, pulling out neatly typed paper sealed with official stamps. The words confirmed it. All of Cheek's properties, businesses, and assets had been left in the names of his wife and children. Betrayal, deeper than Ngozi had imagined, stood naked before them. She clutched the document to her chest, sobbing as if she were embracing her husband's hand once more. Her children gathered around her, their faces tight with a storm of relief and fury. Justice had knocked at their door, and this time, they were ready to answer. The courtroom became the stage where truth and lies finally clashed. Crowds gathered, reporters jostled for space, and whispers of the case spread across the city. The in-laws, once proud and untouchable, shuffled into the dock with downcast faces, their arrogance drained away. Their lawyers argued desperately, claiming cultural inheritance rights and confusion, but the evidence was overwhelming. Witness after witness testified, neighbors who recalled the widow being thrown into the street, staff who admitted they had been threatened into silence, and finally Barrister Okafor himself. Standing with tears in his eyes, he revealed the threats that had forced him into silence. "They swore to bury me and every member of my family if I dared speak. I let fear rule me, and for that, I beg forgiveness. But today, I will not hide. Chief Cheek's wish was never for his family to be cast out. His legacy belongs to his wife and children." The courtroom gasped, the weight of the confession cutting through every corner. The judge, stern and unyielding, reviewed the documents, weighed the testimonies, and finally delivered a verdict that thundered like divine justice. All estates, companies, and properties were to be restored to Ngozi and her children. The uncles were found guilty of fraud, their fraudulent claims void, their names disgraced. The gavel struck, and in that instant, years of pain, hunger, and humiliation gave way to vindication. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed and journalists swarmed, eager for her words. Ngozi, no longer the broken widow who once sold akara by the roadside, stood tall with her children flanking her. Her voice, steady and resolute, carried over the noise. "This victory is not just for us," she declared. "It is for every widow silenced by greed, every orphan cheated of their future, every family threatened into silence. We were thrown into the dust, but we refused to stay there. My husband trusted us to carry his legacy, and today his voice has spoken again. Let this be a reminder. Greed destroys, but resilience restores. Truth may be delayed, but it cannot be buried forever." Her words echoed across the nation, carried by television, radio, and social media. People who once pitied her now celebrated her as a heroine. Strangers sent messages of admiration, widows found strength in her courage, and in marketplaces across the city, traders whispered with pride, "That woman, Ngozi, she has shown us that nothing is impossible." For the uncles, the judgment marked the bitter end of their deceit. Once feared and respected, they now lived in disgrace, their names synonymous with betrayal. Their wealth had rotted, their children had abandoned them, and their health was failing. They were left to bear the crushing weight of their choices, shadows of the men they once pretended to be. But Ngozi carried no bitterness in her heart. She forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because she refused to let hatred poison her triumph. Instead, she poured her energy into building a legacy worthy of her husband's name. With her children, she expanded their businesses, launched foundations to educate orphans, empower widows, and provide shelter for the homeless. Schools, hospitals, and community centers rose under their hands, each one a living testimony of survival turned into strength. And through it all, she remained the same woman who once stood over a pan of akara in the rain, humble, determined, and unyielding in faith. The storm that had tried to strip her bare had instead prepared her for glory. And so, the tale of Ngozi and her children became more than a story. It became a guiding light for generations. When betrayal threatens to silence you, let resilience give you a voice. For in the end, truth will always rise, and justice will always prevail. Today's shout out is for Joan Wilson from Jamaica, Vivian Johnson from USA, Texas, and A. Campbell Maddie from Jamaica. Thank you for watching and sharing in this journey. Your love and support keep these stories alive. May your own path be filled with favor, peace, and the kind of love that never gives up. Don't forget to subscribe, drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from. I might just give you a shout out in the next story.